for sure.
I got to ask you, on the way up, you said something to me that was really interesting about how in creating the sound, the theme for Ant-Man, thinking small wasn't the right way.
Right.
Can you talk more about that? Just I think that's really interesting for people to hear.
Right. Well, that's kind of the first thing you think of when you think, okay, what kind of music would be appropriate for a superhero who can shrink the size of an ant? You know, speeding up voices, chipmunk style. You know, that's one way to create a small sound. And there are other kind of fun techniques to make it small. You could, we thought about could we have some miniature instruments made, for example, and try to record them, and what would that sound like? And we also talked a little bit about the electronic approaches that I experimented with to sort of create these skittery, glitchy, broken digital sounds that recall, let's say like a cybernetic ant or a cybernetic mosquito or something. But I think to make something sound small, however appropriate it might be to a character who can get so physically small, is really working at cross purposes to what we want to do emotionally with the music, which is big, right? I mean, the poster says it all. It says heroes never get bigger, right? They're totally playing on the contrast between the bigness of the story and the smallness of the character. So I couldn't have any music really that sounded small, because it would diminish the power of that heroism, which is a big emotion. It's not a small emotion. And music is about emotions more than about physical size.
I've seen a lot of the films you've scored. How do you score a film like Cake and then Edge of Tomorrow? How does that work?
It's a great question. I don't know that I have an answer to that exactly. To me, it has always been pretty easy to switch my brain into thinking a different way from the way that I have been thinking. Ultimately, I think it's a similar answer to the TV versus movies question I get often, which is really, it's all storytelling through music. Just because in one film I am doing a more esoteric, electronic, ambient type of style, whereas in another film I'm doing what you might call a more muscular, contemporary, action, sci-fi type of vibe. The instruments are different, the techniques of writing for those instruments are very different, but ultimately it's all storytelling through music. The fundamental problems a composer has to solve, maybe a better way of putting it, the fundamental questions a composer has to answer are the same. Whose point of view is the music taking in this piece of music? This character or that character? And is it literal? If I'm taking a certain character's point of view, am I taking it literally, or am I going to play counterpoint to that in some way to create, another layer of emotion that maybe can add something that's not already on the screen, and that applies to any genre or any style of music. The rest is just the mechanics of, how do I make a piece that's made all in the computer with synthesizers for very little money for a buddy of mine that I went to college with, in the case of Cake, sound great, versus, going to London and recording an 80-piece orchestra for Edge of Tomorrow. Totally different techniques, but I don't, that's almost the easy part,
So,
it's like,
whose point of view is from in Cake?